The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you. Hello and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
The Get Down Mr. President, that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him. Did you ever play that, Anthony? Did you have abusive friends like I did?
No.
Oh, that's fun. Get Down Mr. President, where just out of the blue, one of your friends say, Get Down Mr. President and tackle. Just everybody tackle just one guy.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I may have been friends with psychos. I don't know. We're sociopaths. Yeah.
The thing like that I remember was the deal where someone would like get down on all fours behind someone and you would shove them and they'd trip over the person.
Oh, yeah? What was that called? That wasn't leapfrog. I know exactly what you're talking about, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, different experiences, that's all, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're here with Death Race 2000.
So this is a wild movie. Like, it's stupid, but it's very smart about its stupidity. I think we've said that a couple times.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's very trashy, but it's kind of got some. It's got something that it's saying. You know, it's not.
There's a message.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good message, kind of, sort of, mostly. But also, the tongue is strong in that cheek. Oh,
yeah. Which, this movie's directed by Paul Bartel, which he's kind of, like, known for that. You know, like, he's, you know, Mary Warrenoff is in this, and the two of them work together a lot. You know, you see them in, like, Chopping Mall together, but I think he directed, Eating Raoul... And, you know, he tends to have, like you said, it's tongue-in-cheek, it's real trashy, it's real silly, but there's something to chew on there that's a little bit more real.
I mean, this is clearly a dystopian setting. Obviously, we've got, you know, the rebellion effectively, but also the rebellion's kind of incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, nobody comes out looking great.
No, everybody's awful.
Frankenstein, maybe, but
no,
like,
he's still pretty gross.
Yeah, he's kind of a jerk. Like, you kind of, when you get to the end of it, it all kind of comes together, and you're like, oh, okay, I get, you know, but yeah, everybody, and I think it's kind of speaks to, you know, this sort of dystopian world. Like, everybody, you know,
there's a level of awful. For sure.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, we're getting there in our own real world where things are so bad that you kind of have this instinct to protect yourself and guard yourself and not trust anybody, and it kind of makes everybody a little less kind to each other.
Right.
And that kind of, you know, you get that vibe from this. Like, by the end of this, you know, I mean, obviously we'll get there, but like, you know, Frankenstein and Annie have a lot of things in common, and it takes a long time before they finally... you know, open up to each other about that because they're just so guarded.
Right. It's basically, they don't even let their guard down until they're like, hey, we're both pretty hot. Spoiler alert, by the way, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that is kind of a plot twist, that they're both hot.
Yeah.
for saying David Carradine, a man who, you know, is, I don't know, kind of problematic, he's kind of been beneficial to people of color, especially Asians, also been a problem in certain regards. You know, a very complicated person who at least went out in a very interesting way. You got to say that.
Yeah,
I'll let people research that one. Then we also have, I think, the first role of Sylvester Stallone that wasn't porn.
Interesting. Yeah, and I knew it was an early one, and yeah, I know he had that, like, the Italian stallion.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, you know, he's got a brand, and he had to keep it up, right?
Yeah. It is, like, it's funny, like, watching him in this, and I was just like, this is we don't have people, like, actors like him anymore. Like, he can't act at all. Like, he's
Not really.
just the same guy in everything.
Well, he's a hyper-exaggerated version in this one, for sure. Mm-hmm. And he's actually comedic because of it.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought, like, Sylvester Stallone could actually be funny. Right?
Yeah.
Even though he has been in comedies, but, usually he's kind of the straight man.
Yeah.
Which is also weird,
But yeah, it's like him and like Arnold Schwarzenegger, these guys that just like they have like thick accents and they just kind of like act gruff all the time, and that's their whole thing. I mean, I guess now, we have like maybe like Vin Diesel or something, but I feel like he had, if you look at him in like Guardians of the Galaxy versus like Fast and the Furious, he can do some stuff. He's got a little bit of a range, like The Rock, the same way,
Listen, no one else has ever made me cry by just saying Superman. Okay?
Right, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he does some great voiceover stuff, but yeah, I guess Sylvester Stallone is also in Guardians of the Galaxy now that I think about it, but it is interesting, just like we used to have these kind of like character actors that just, we loved them because like Rocky and Rambo were basically the same guy, just one's got boxing gloves and one's got a machine gun, but they're basically the same.
Here's the weird thing, though. Like, Rambo didn't become that until Sylvester Stallone became popular, right? Because before that, he was a soldier with PTSD. Like,
yeah, that's true. First Blood is...
Exactly. There was actually a story there, and there was some nuance. Mm-hmm. But then after Sylvester Stallone's like, I'm making bank, baby. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I could just be me and make money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
those are really our only like big actors. It's it's mostly like minor genre actors, and we do have the real Don Steele, who was like a popular DJ at this time, and he just played a DJ in a lot of movies as well. And
basically
he's like,
does the same here.
Yeah, he's like the main sort of reporter that's like real campy and silly and stuff.
Junior.
But, yeah, he's also in, I think, Gremlins and Rock and Roll High School, just being a weirdo DJ.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, you gotta love a guy who just like, he can do his one thing really well and people seek him out. I guess that's the same thing with Sylvester Stallone, right?
See, here's the thing. He puts so much emphasis on everything. Maybe the guy just did a line of coke before he started filming. But like he's so energetic about everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he seems so excited about all of the massacres and all the violence going on around him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's perfect for this movie because I mean that's the kind of like disconnect we want there, where like we see the horrible stuff and then I guess it speaks to this sort of like desire to see that kind of stuff that still exists in humans to this day. It's the reality TV thing. We want to see the car wreck, just the drama between real people. Things haven't changed that much.
He's also kind of the Goebbels of this world, right? Because he is the media personality that is pushing the agenda of Mr. President.
Yeah, he's the face of the regime, even though he's not technically part of the regime.
Right. You might as well be, right? We would basically, he's like a Hannity,
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Or fucker Carl or Harrelson or whatever you want to say.
Yes. Yeah. That's a really good comparison for sure.
Man, could you? The fucked up part is you could see them doing something like this, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Perfectly.
It's that charismatic evil that people are just drawn to.
Yeah. That somehow like the right attracts so much.
Yeah.
Wonder why. Wonder what's up with that. That's interesting.
Right. Yeah.
We could do a paper on that. All right. So anyway, let's actually start talking about the movie. We're going to start off with a bunch of medical images followed by the Star Spangled Banner. Mm-hmm. Kind of like Herbert West Reanimator a little bit almost.
Yeah. We see that a lot with Frankenstein stuff. We got to start with that sort of kind of sets the tone. But then, as soon as the credits end and you get like marching band, national anthem, flags, balloons.
A futuristic matte painting.
Yeah, we're showing this is very patriotic in a way that's a little ominous. We see this big crowd gathered in front of like a racetrack sort of. They're all waving flags. Some of them are waving flags with swastikas on them. What's going on there? We'll find out pretty quickly. But
right. Apparently, the American flag has been added a nice strong iron fist instead of the stars.
Yeah. First, there's the bishop of the
deacon.
The deacon, that's right. Yeah, he comes out and kind of welcomes the crowd to the race.
Giving his blessing, right?
Mm-hmm. And then we get Junior, our charismatic announcer, who introduces us to each of the racers. And we kind of like cut around, a little bit, but we eventually will be introduced to Calamity Janie.
Yeah, Calamity Jane Kelly.
Mm-hmm. This is Mary Warrenoff, and so she's got a bull themed car, and
well, she also has a bull named Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but yeah, she's like, "Yep, I bang all my navigators."
Right.
Basically, she says she's replaced each one in every race she's been in.
Mm-hmm. We also have Matilda the Hun from Milwaukee.
Yeah,
So this is where the swastika flag. She's kind of Nazi themed.
Well, her navigator is literally called Herman the Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we also are introduced to the other face, the feminine face of the regime, known as Grace Pander. By the way, Pander, really?
Yeah.
Fair enough. And everyone's her friend. My dear friend. My dear friend.
Yeah. And then let's see, we've got Nero the Hero Lotigan, who is kind of like, Roman themed. His car looks like a lion. His navigator's name is Cleopatra. And then we get Machine Gun Joe. Yeah. And this is obviously, Sylvester Stallone. And he's got an Italian gangster vibe going on.
Now, we did kind of slightly skip over the introduction of the man, the myth, the legend, Frankenstein, who gets wheeled in on a gurney fucking WWE style.
Yeah.
This man's a showman.
Yeah, it's really good. So, we cut back and forth. We get, out on the track. We're meeting each racer as they pull up. But, yeah, Frankenstein, he's got a longer kind of drawn-out introduction where he's, backstage. And, yeah, they roll him out, and they're talking about they just had to reattach a leg from the previous race. And,
He had his arm reattached to the previous time.
Mm-hmm. And there's reporters all gathered around him, and we don't see him at first. He's under a sheet, and then when he gets up, the camera's kind of at his back and stuff. But he's they're asking him questions about his best friend, Mr. President. Mm-hmm. They ask him about that he's got a new navigator, that they hear she's a red hot sex pot, and he's like, I haven't met her, but she better be a red hot navigator, because that's what's important.
He's all about business, baby. Yeah. Oh, by the way, we didn't mention that Mr. Nero is kind of a celebrity to a point, but more so now than he used to be, which is odd. Martin Kove, for those of you who know The Karate Kid and I believe Cobra Kai.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the original instructor of Cobra Kai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
So, yeah. Because of the show, that's become a thing, right?
Yeah. So yeah, Frankenstein kind of just walks off from the reporters. He's he's very brusque. He's just I don't have time for this shit kind of guy. But so he does go and meet his navigator. Her name is Annie Smith, and she's like, here's the diagnostics on the repairs on your car. He again is very gruff with her.
Yeah, we get his kind of his face and his gimp suit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's wearing this black leather sort of balaclava kind of thing where you just see his eyes and mouth.
Another question. He has a helmet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is 1975. Star Wars wouldn't come out till 1978.
It has a very similar kind of dome quality as the Vader helmet,
as Vader.
For sure.
Also, though, they do mention that he is more machine than man. I'm not saying that Lucas stole it. But
he's all in black. He's got the black flowing cape.
The cape? Yeah.
The vibes are very similar. I did not think about that.
Wait a second, folks. I think somebody cribbed somebody's homework here.
And I mean, if you think about it, like, so he's got the eye and mouth cutouts, and like around one of his eyes, there's a bunch of scar tissue and stuff. And when you think about how Vader looked at the end, when you see his face,
yeah, one eye.
It's very similar.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
No one. I haven't heard anyone call this out. Maybe this is better known in certain circles, but I'm just saying.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Lucas was like a scholar of kind of like genre film and everything. So
yeah.
But we also like, as they're talking, he's kind of like acting like he's not going to trust her, and she's like, listen, I know that you're good at what you do, but I'm good at what I do. So like, we need to work together. That's the best way for us to try to win this. And he's like, we'll see.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Fair enough. He's definitely not the trusting type. So, like you said, Machine Gun Joe Paterno does his thing. He's loved by thousands, hated by millions. Just the one-liners in this are great.
Yeah, he's definitely like the heel of of this. I mean, I guess they're all kind of like, they have their fan base and their detractors, but he's, like he gets out of his car and he just like starts firing a machine gun over the crowd's heads.
Because
like
they're in love with Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
He has serious driver envy for Frankenstein.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that recurs so many times. There's some really good bits with that as we go.
Right. And of course, as he pulls up next to Frankenstein, he hawks a loogie on Joe hawks a loogie on Frank's car, and Frankenstein's like, "Oh, you'll regret that, Joe."
Yeah. So at this point, we have everybody lined up. That they're getting ready to race, and the broadcast cuts to Mr. President at his summer palace, where he's like giving the inspirational speech.
Right, but it's not his summer palace in Moscow; it's a summer palace in Peking. Which that's interesting. That apparently the American president has palaces in two, at the time, very communist countries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's the politics here is, I mean, especially like for the time, is like really edgy and like, definitely like poking fun at the sort of underlying fascism of like all patriotism, and especially Americans.
Well, it's also like the where Oceania's at war with Eurasia or something. Basically, Big Brother vibes, right? 1984. All that stuff.
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
But so eventually, like he gives a very patriotic, like rah kind of speech, and then like does and they're off kind of thing. He announces or kicks off the race, and the drivers all speed off. And then
Frank and Joe just immediately kind of go at each other right from the jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of this movie does a good job of like actually showing most of the race, but also keeping the plot moving. It could easily, it could easily like fall into where it's just like you don't care about the race or you don't care about the characters because it's just a race. But it does a really good job, I think, of balancing that. And I think part of that is all of the various reporters. They kind of keep the plot moving forward. As they all take off, we get a bunch of different. We get Junior, but we also just get several other reporters like back in different like news studios and stuff, and they're all kind of giving play-by-plays.
Right, and then we get a little bit of diegetic scenery with the rebels are watching all the reports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're like in a factory somewhere, and they're talking. So these are like. Yeah, it's a secret rebellion. They're discussing plans to bring the race to a halt.
We got to capture kind of like kill Frankenstein.
Yeah, and so we sort of see that there's like two factions. There's like an older lady who is sort of the leader, but there's like a younger guy who isn't like her opposition, but he wants to push harder. He wants to be a little bit more proactive than she does. Right. He doesn't trust the current plan.
She's the slow and actually, to be fair, I think this is almost making a commentary on like you have the older people that like are saying the thing about doing the right thing, just not doing it. They're being sedentary about it. And then you also have the younger ones that are just doing stuff without planning. They're just doing shit.
Yeah, and obviously protest works best when those things are combined,
Yes.
and you have actions and plans and like physical things you're doing in the real world, but that they've been carefully thought out. When you just have people running wild in the streets protesting, but like not actually doing anything.
Yeah, you're just making noise, right?
Yeah, and that tends to just upset the regular people who aren't paying attention.
Right. What you got to do is you really got to piss them off, not just upset them.
Yeah, you have to be out in people's faces, but you have to have a message behind it. And so, yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. And so we find out that the central plan that they're working on is Annie, Frankenstein's new navigator, is this woman's granddaughter.
Great-granddaughter, apparently.
Okay, yeah. And she's obviously a plant, and they're going to try to use her to set up this sort of sting operation where they can capture Frankenstein and hold him hostage to try to end the race.
Right, because he is Mr. President's best friend, effectively, right?
Yeah. And so we cut from that to Frankenstein and Annie driving, and they're kind of talking about all the injuries he's experienced over the years from various races.
Right, we get comments on him basically being held together with plaster and duct tape, effectively.
Mm-hmm. And she asks him, has anybody seen what you look like under the mask? And he's like, only my navigators, but none of them have survived.
Right. Immediately tears off the mask, and it's just David Carradine. just a normal guy underneath. No scars, no nothing.
Yeah, the scars are part of the mask. He's just a regular dude under there. And he just kind of jokes, what'd you expect? Another pretty face?
Yeah.
So things are not what they seem already. Something else is going on.
Oh yeah, and they just keep twisting, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So we get our first kill, technically, with Joe and his navigator Myra running down a construction worker.
Mm-hmm. So this is the first indication. We knew that we had this sort of. I mean, obviously the movie's called Death Race, but up to this, it's just been the Trans-America race. Mm-hmm. But now we see that there's a point system in place for running down pedestrians.
Right. It turns out the guy's 38 years old, and if he was at 40, he would have been worth 3 times the points. By the way, this is where the points thing, that everyone jokes about, this is where it originated.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get another quick scene of Frankenstein and Annie where he's trying to be a dick to her to sort of see how loyal she is.
Right.
So he makes her climb up on the car and do some fine-tune engine adjustments while he's driving.
Yeah.
And when she gets done and crawls back into the seat, he's like, "Oh, I'm glad to see you navigated your way back." And
you are worth it.
I mean, it feels like it's hazing, he's being cruel to her to see if she's really in it, for the right reason, quote unquote.
Well, I mean, I think that he is, right? He's testing, they're testing each other, or he's testing her loyalty throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now the question is it loyalty to, Mr. President or something else? We'll find that out.
Yeah.
Can we do the breakdown?
Yeah, the breakdown of the point system.
So women are worth an additional 10 points. Teens are worth 40. Toddlers under 12? Are there toddlers over 12? Right. Toddlers are worth 70. Yeah.
I thought toddlers were under 5.
Right. I thought they were under 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But apparently, toddlers are worth 70 points and elderly are worth 100. So I imagine if you got an elderly child, no, and an elderly woman, that's 110 points or,
Yeah. Yeah. So, but the reporters also kind of point out that so far the racers haven't seen a lot of people. It seems like everybody is wise. It's kind of like the Purge, everyone's staying inside. They know the race is going on and they don't want to get run over.
Yeah, who the hell would go outside during this when they know that people are coming their way, right?
Yeah.
Do you think the media would actually tell them the route? I mean, I guess they kind of do. So
yeah, I mean, you're seeing a map and stuff, but also there's no particular route other than the checkpoints. There are points where the racers diverge and take different routes based on their own personal ideas about where they can get more points and what'll get them to the checkpoints faster.
We get a great scene with a guy trying to bullfight Calamity Jane's car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's clearly not afraid of it, and of course
he should have been.
It worked. Yeah, it works for a little bit, but eventually she does run him down. And then at the same time, Frankenstein knows that one of his little like bonus things for being the president's friend is he knows that there's a geriatric hospital that has a euthanasia day where they just set a bunch of old people out in the streets for him to run over to get a bunch of points.
Literally, these nurses are just wheeling the old people out there. And apparently the old people don't mind, I guess, because they don't seem like they're trying to struggle against it.
Yeah, they're just, I mean, I guess it's like, well, I'm going to die soon anyway. I might as well go out getting run down by American Hero Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah. But
instead...
yeah, he pulls a fast one on him.
Yeah, he steers around and just runs over a bunch of doctors and nurses.
Yeah. And
all the commentators are shocked. They're like, "What? Oh, these aren't worth as many points." But it shows he's got a sense of humor. He's up to something.
Well, like you were saying, that's one guy says he has an American sense of humor. It's like probably too much, yes. But I do like how Gracie Pander once again. She's like, those doctors were really good friends of mine, but they were getting a bit too smug.
Right. Yeah.
So she's even like washing over that and be like, they deserved it for being there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get another quick scene with the protesters talking about that they've got some sabotage attempts kind of set up.
Right.
And we cut right to one where Nero is upset that he doesn't have any points, and he sees a family on a picnic, and he's like, this is perfect.
Right. So I'm going to run that whole family down. Turns out the mom was actually the lead saboteur.
Yeah. Like as he's driving towards them, the navigator's like, they're probably going to split up. So, we're aiming for women and children here. You want the high point things.
Yeah.
And when the mom runs away, she leaves the baby behind. And he's like, baby, perfect. So he goes to run over the baby, and it's not actually a baby, it's a bomb.
Yeah, it's a baby bomb.
Yep, so that takes out Nero. He's our first racer to die.
Oh, interesting. Then we cut to an interview with Miss Rhonda Bainbridge, the widow of Joe Viterno's first victim in this race. This is very Running Man, right? Have you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
She gets a two-room apartment in Acapulco, and a 3D ultraphonic TV. Is that what they said?
Yeah. So they're taking care of people who have casualties from the race.
But it's like blood money, right? It's like your loved one died, so here's some stuff.
Yeah.
That'll soothe your pain, right?
But then the broadcast gets interrupted by the protest leader. We get her name. It's Thomasina Payne. So obviously, absolutely, yeah.
But the age of obedience is over, Anthony.
Yeah. She's declaring war on the president and on the death race.
Listen,
and
I'm
she
here
claimed,
fuck obedience.
Yeah. This is like they're trying to really change things, and they also, like most terrorist organizations do, she proudly claims credit for the death of Nero. We did that, and we're going to keep doing this until we shut the race down.
Yeah, she says we're going to end the transcontinental road rape. She doesn't say race, rape.
Yes, yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
And
not the rape; it's just the sentiment.
Yeah, right. And we go straight from that to Annie, who, they're in the car and they hear this announcement, and she's like, "Are you worried about this, Frankenstein? What's going on? What do you think?" Yeah, and he's like, "I don't care about all that. Winning,
I just gotta beat Joe."
Yeah. I just gotta pass Joe. That's all I care about.
Fair enough. So then we get Matilda the Hun, she's what, like. Who does she run up on? She runs up on some people, and it looks like they're trying to ambush her.
Yeah, I think they're trying to set up a roadblock, but she's coming at it from the back, so she just runs them down and keeps going.
Well, yeah, she runs one guy over, and then Joe pulls up, or he knocks the guy off the ladder.
Yeah, because there's guys setting up a roadblock, and then there's guys with them setting up a pro Frankenstein.
Yes, Matilda hits the guy setting up the roadblock.
So he's obviously he hates Frankenstein stuff, so he runs the guy down, or he like knocks him off the ladder, and then doesn't he like back up to run over him? Like
he almost hits him, and then he asks the guy's buddy, "Hey, should I kill this guy?" And his buddy gives him the thumbs up, so he runs over the guy's head.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
And then we find out that they have checkpoints, and that's kind of how this race works. Is everybody stops at the same checkpoint for the night, and then they'll all take off again in the morning. Right. So we have our first checkpoint where we see the cars getting maintenance, and the racers are all getting massages.
But nobody's allowed to talk about Nero. Nero's death was, caused by, they don't say the French yet, but some outside party.
Yeah, there's like an official from the president there telling them this, and Joe is like, everybody knows the resistance did it, and he's like, no, we're not going to talk about that.
Right, you're going to keep mum on that one.
Yeah, so instead, we have Miss Pander comes in to interview
her dear friends.
Yeah, so she's interviewing Matilda, and she ends up sort of like kicking off an argument between Matilda and Janie.
A naked argument.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the argument's main purpose was so that the two women who are naked getting massages have to get up off the table to argue. So we just get a topless argument between the two of them.
Sexiest argument I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, all the regular people, drivers are getting massages, but then Frankenstein comes strolling through in his full leather getup.
Almost gimp suit.
Yeah, and the reporters want to interview him, but he doesn't really want to talk. But he does notice that Annie is talking to Joe. So his navigator talking to his main rival. So he goes over to Joe's navigator and just kind of whispers something to her, just innocuous. He just wants to stir up trouble.
Yeah, just tell them I'm whispering sweet nothings into your ear.
Yeah, and right away Joe comes over. He's like, "What did he say to you?" And she's like, "He said I'm a sweet nothing, I think. I don't really understand."
Right. But he slaps her for that.
Yeah. Obviously, Joe's not a good guy either.
No, he's very abusive. I guess we should put content. This one's confusing about where to put the content warnings.
Yeah, I mean,
it's comedic, but
yeah, it's all comedic. There's not really a lot of gore. There's not there's never a situation where I feel like this movie is always on the side of right. Anything bad that happens in it, the movie is clearly showing you this is awful. We should all be opposed to this. So,
and also Joe and Myra are like Punch and Judy, right? Like they're until Joe's not, but that's usually with other people, right? Like his interactions with her, they are violent, but it's a very goofy violence, if that can be said.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
So then after Frank whispers to Myra, he goes into a hallway where he runs into a fan she's wearing like a black shirt with just a big white F on it. That's like what all the Frankenstein fans wear.
Okay, this girl is absolutely proto-goth because she's wearing a black choker and a black skirt too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he thinks she's a groupie who wants to have sex. And she's like, no, I just want you to know that I understand you. I just wanted you to meet me so that later you'll understand.
Right, and you'll know that I love you. Or that, I'll teach you about love, basically, is her way of saying it.
Yeah, and she's the president of some faction of the Frankenstein fan club.
Chapter 7 of the Frankenstein.
Yeah, he's like, okay, sure. So
you're a national hero.
Yeah. He's a little weirded out by the interaction, but he's like, fine, whatever. So he goes to his room where Annie is there, and he's like, I saw you talking to Joe. What was that about?
Right. He's like, I can't trust you.
Yeah. And she was like, well, he was, pumping me for information about, maybe shortcuts, navigation routes. And so I gave him some faulty info. If he follows this, he's going to end up driving off a cliff. This could, I could get him out of the race for us.
Fair enough.
And, Frank's like, okay, but he's not going to do that unless he sees us take that route. And she's like, all we got to do is let him get ahead of us, and then he won't know. So they're like, okay, sure.
And now they start getting a little bit intimate because is she putting on stockings to go to bed?
I guess.
Who does that?
I mean, it seems like that's a seduction thing, right? You don't put on stockings to go to bed unless you want.
They're preparing to have sex.
Yeah. And he gets undressed, and not only is his face not scarred up, but his body is fine.
Right, and she's like, "Oh, is that the arm you lost in the last race?" And he's like, "Yeah, I lost my leg a couple years ago too." and
Yeah.
everything's fine. He's wearing a Speedo. No
yeah,
scars.
He does not look like a Frankenstein monster at all.
He looks
so
like
she
prime David Carradine, as much as
Yeah.
that could be said.
Yeah, and but he's in a Speedo and he's still wearing his mask, and she's like wrapped up in a towel, and they kind of like embrace, and she drops the towel at the same time that she pulls off his
They
mask.
go for a little dance.
Yeah, and she's like, "What else did those Swiss mechanics replace on you?" And he's like, "Oh wait, and I'll show you."
Hell yeah,
Yeah.
smooth as hell, man. I guess.
Yeah. So they fall into bed, and then we just fade to black.
Yeah,
so we know what's
they
up.
have sex.
Yeah.
So the next morning, the deacon is praying for all of the racers, and like he's like, "Oh, thank you for Calamity Jane and Joe, and bless Nero and all that. But thank you most of all for the glorious Frankenstein."
Yeah. And so when the racers take off, Frankenstein drops one of his like black gloves out of the window, and then
why
he
did he
like
do
turns around to get it, and also just runs over the deacon.
Yeah.
And Annie's like, "Why did you do that?" And he's like, "You got to give him something to talk about. Like you got to keep everybody on their toes." And
Yeah, I
all the
love how
commentators are like,
Holy Chrysler!
"Yeah." They're like, "Is that points? Does that count? What is? Well, no
Yeah.
one's ever talked about like."
Religious deacons, they're not points. And then all of a sudden they get this notice. Well, turns out race officials are worth points now, so we're all fucked.
Yeah, he could run any of us down at any time. Who knows?
Yep.
We thought we were safe, but nope. He's worth 50 points.
But how interesting is that just because to do the whole bread and circuses thing, that the regime will turn on even those that are their mouthpieces? If it keeps people focused on something else.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those like nothing is sacred here. Like we will, we'll throw anybody under the bus to make.
We really don't believe in anything except for power.
Absolutely, yeah. And so right after he runs the deacon down, he's continuing on his journey, and we see the girl from earlier. She's standing in the middle of the road, and we see the rest of the fan club. They're all in their like black, Frankenstein shirts, but now she's in like this
White gown.
sort of like baptismal, flowy, white gown.
For her sacrifice, effectively.
Yeah, so he runs her down, and Annie's like, "Why did she do that?" And he's like, to show me that she loves me. Like she's giving herself to me in the most intimate way possible.
Yeah.
So
as fucked up as that sounds, yeah.
Yeah, it's very dark.
I mean, but also it's like he did understand, and he kind of reciprocated to a point.
Yeah, he gave her what she wanted. Like this is, the best gift that he can give her. Like he's a killer, and so he killed her. That's what she's there. Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
Yeah. Then it's immediately followed up by a darkly comedic moment where we get three old greasers lining up near a manhole cover.
Yeah, and they're kind of playing chicken as like some of the racers approach, and then they all start like jumping down in the manhole, but like
one's an asshole and
Yeah.
pulls in the manhole before his buddy can jump down.
Yeah, so he's stuck outside. He gets hit and killed, but then the other guys peek their heads out of the manhole,
Start laughing.
Yeah, and then a car backs over them, or no,
Joe.
the next car comes by and runs them down. Yeah,
Joe runs them down. So they deserved it. So
Yeah, we're getting these civilians and showing that like there's this sort of sense that like maybe by sacrificing myself to the machine of this death race that I will become great in some sort of way like
remembered, right?
Yeah,
Well, it's
I mean
also
it's
nihilistic in that a couple of these guys are just literally doing it for the yucks, right?
Yeah, it seems. I mean, it feels very much like the way that that reality TV was like 10 years ago, or the way that like social media is now. People will get on there and do horrific shit to themselves just for the likes. And I guess that's always been a thing. Like I guess even before this, you had like assassins and stuff. Like if I want to go out with a bang, I want people to remember my name. So I guess it's a human urge that's been around forever. And
Go out in a blaze of glory, right?
Yeah.
But then we also get some lines between Joe and Myra where he's trying to prove he's not a schmuck, and he just is constantly threatening to beat Myra.
And he's really like, he can't decide if he wants to trust Annie's advice if he should take the detour, and at the last minute he decides to, and he takes her route.
Right.
And then meanwhile we get Annie talking to Frankenstein, and she's like, while Joe's doing that, we could detour another way, and there is
a bunch of
penitent
officials.
Yeah, it's a penitence colony where like the former congressmen who are now under arrest, these are, people who, it's, right now we see this stuff in the news with the Supreme Court saying that yeah. So this is like the president has decided these people are political enemies, so now they're imprisoned. And she's like, they'd be worth a ton of points. We could just drive through there and run a bunch of people down. And Frankenstein's like, there's going to be a lot of guards there. Like, I don't want to get like shot up. And she's like, no, this is going to be worth it. I think we can do it.
Right. But oddly enough, then we cut to Miss Payne, and she has a Frankenstein impersonator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's like this sort of ambush attempt, and Frankenstein manages to break through, and in the process, the guy dressed like him there gets run over.
Well, he literally says to him, "I'm sorry about that, this brother," and then throws him down.
Yeah, and so he's like, that was weird. Like, that was way easier to deal with than I would have expected.
Yeah, but they
But how did they know where I was?
Yeah, because they had a guy dressed like me.
Mm-hmm.
That's weird, right?
Yeah.
Do you think Joe told them? Do you think somebody else told them? So he knows.
Yeah, he's definitely suspicious that she told him. In fact, he's like, hang on. He pulls over and he's like, you drive for a little bit.
Yeah. So it's almost like he's going to kill her here. At least he's thinking about it.
Yeah, he's definitely like testing her here. Meanwhile, Joe runs into the end of the line. He doesn't die, but it's like a river. I think the road just ends there, and
there's a fisherman.
And he's talking to them, and he's like, "How do the quickest way to get to the next checkpoint?" And the guy's like,
"Oh, you got
to go back to the highway. You're way off track."
By the way, I love everything you do. I named my kid and my dog after you, Mr. Frankenstein.
Yep. So then Joe runs him down. Of course, he's not happy about being mistaken for Frankenstein.
It's amazing. Then we get another cool. It's another darkly comedic scene where Calamity Jane and her navigator Paul are working on the car, and she is in the car while he is like almost under the car.
Yeah, he's like half his body's under the car and his legs are sticking out.
But here comes Matilda.
Yeah, she drives real close by and runs him over and kills him.
Right, and now Jane's not mad that she killed her navigator exactly. She's mad that she scored points on Jane's navigator.
Yeah. So of course Jane speeds after her, and they kind of are running each other off the road. And I think then we see the
rebels setting up a Wile E. Coyote trap.
Yes. Yeah, I put a Looney Tunes prank. Like they literally they put a detour sign across the road, and then they have a painted fake brick tunnel.
Right. It's like it's like cardboard. It's a cardboard facade.
Yeah, and as they drive into the tunnel, we see that the other side is a cliff. Right. So Matilda speeds off the cliff and explodes, but Janie manages to see the wreckage and stop before, so she doesn't get killed.
Right, and this gets real for Jane for a moment, because she's like, oh shit, the people are trying to kill us.
Yeah, this is, there's kind of this thing, like the racers are against each other, but they're kind of safe.
Right, they can kill people can't kill them.
Yeah.
Right. But then they try to report this on the news. Junior is like, oh no, Matilda has survived. And he basically gets told, don't report that.
Yeah, he gets handed a slip of paper and he's like, she just made an impressive score. Please stand by. And they cut away. And so we go back to Annie and Frank, and she's like, can we switch back? Why am I driving?
And he's like, nah, you're still driving. Also, there's a kid down the road. I want you to hit him. Super easy.
And so, she's really nervous, and then she just drives completely around the kid, and she's like, sorry, I missed. And he's like,
stop.
Missed? Come on. So he's like, where's the compound? And she's like, oh, it's about 20 miles ahead. And he's like, where's the compound?
Right.
And she's like, okay, it's in Japan.
Right. It's nowhere near here. It's in Japan. And he's like, okay, so you're trying to set me up. You're part of the rebels. You know, he basically figures it all out, or he's figured it all out, and he lays it on the line for her.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm Thomasina Payne's granddaughter. The plan was to swap you for that imposter and then submit, a list of demands for your return. And Frankenstein just kind of laughs at that because he knows something she doesn't, which is that he's not really the president's best friend. This is all part of the pageantry.
Yes, and we're going to learn a little bit more because there's another couple twists coming. Is it here or later on that he says, yeah, basically Frankensteins are farmed in that we're basically soldier kids, child soldiers that are trained to be Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a little bit later that he'll tell her that, but yeah, I mean, there's, obviously the non-injury thing going on here. There's and if you know that there's more, the rest of this series, that kind of gets into that a little bit more, but
then we go to the survivors having a party, which is just basically Joe dancing with Jane and Myra.
Yeah, they're all having dinner and they're talking and everything, and like. They want to know if they're going to be protected from the rebels. They know this is now, something bigger is going on here.
Right. By the way, at this point, while they're having dinner, Joe's face has a little bit of white stuff just under his nose. Turns out it's cream, though, even though it's clearly alluded to be cocaine.
Yeah, because eventually he will end up throwing, like, this official is like, there's no rebels, but you don't know what you're talking about.
The French.
Yeah. And Joe like throws food at the official. There's like a violinist playing while everyone's eating. He grabs the violin and smashes it and like storms off. Meanwhile, some like Secret Service type guys come up to Frankenstein and they want to talk to him.
Yeah, just
in private,
not Annie.
Yeah, so in the hallway they're like, tell us about the ambush. And did you choose that alternate route or was that your navigator? So clearly they think Annie might be up to something, but Frankenstein protects her. He's like, no, this was all me. I made the choice. And they're like, okay, all right, good luck out there.
So then we move to Annie walking in on Joe fucking with Frankenstein's car.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of have this sort of like flirtatious thing, but there's a lot of tension. And he ends up like grabbing her and like he's like choking her out, like he is gonna kill Annie. But Frankenstein bursts in,
just
gets into
Joe's ass.
Yeah, they get in a fist fight, and eventually it ends with Frankenstein. Like Joe's car has a huge knife sticking out of the front of it, and Frankenstein's like holding his head, like I could impale you, but instead he lets him go, like kind of marking him, like I've humiliated you and let you live.
Right.
And Joe is pissed. He's like, next chance I get, you're dead, and he like storms off.
And then we get to a scene with Annie and Frankenstein Annie gets naked again.
Mm-hmm. And Frankenstein's like, what were you doing in the garage? And she's like, why don't you just turn me in? I'm a traitor or whatever.
Yeah. This is where he tells the story of him being a child soldier.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they're obviously revealing a lot of personal information to each other. They're getting closer. They're getting to a point where they actually trust each other.
Right. And we also get a notice of, hey, why don't you ever take that one glove off? You took the other one off when you killed the deacon, but why not that one?
Yeah, and he's just like, don't worry about it, basically.
Yeah.
So the next day, they get in the car together she's like, I did diagnostics, everything's good. Don't worry, I would never sabotage the car.
Right. Well, that's small comfort, I guess. But Joe's crew starts mocking him as they're pushing him up to the starting line. They say, how many points does he get for that shiner?
Right. And like Janie pulls up and she's like being like, good luck out there, guys. And Frank's like, thanks.
Right.
And Joe's
the
like,
fact that she's like, it was a pleasure racing with you all. It's like, oh, she's dead. She knows she's dead, and she's dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, like Frankenstein's kind of nice back to her, but Joe is not. And then as they, the racers start again, Joe ends up running down all of his pit crew.
He throws it in reverse.
Yeah, and everyone's like, oh man, he just got a bunch of points. This could really change things because Frankenstein is ahead in the race, But if he gets to the finish line first and Joe has enough points, he could still win the race from second place.
Right. Now, he makes a comment about Myra looking like one very large baked potato.
Yeah. Like she's not like a, potato-shaped person in any way.
No.
Like, he's just a jerk to her. Like, it's just, that cruelty there.
Yeah, we get Gracie Pander once again talking about how Joe, or her friend Joe, when he was a kid, used to love to ride over his pet snake. So he's been a killer for all this time.
Yeah. So then we get the sort of end of Janie, which is pretty elaborate. We see like a bunch of saboteurs setting up landmines, and then a bunch of like motorcyclists sort of surrounding her and kind of like forcing her off the road.
She gets one final fight scene.
Yeah, it's really cool. She like takes out all these motorcycle guys, but then she like screeches to a halt, like inches away from, and it's like, oh good, she made it. And she sees ahead of her there's a bunch of like exploded cars, and so she's like, oh, this is not the way to go, I'm gonna back up. Right. And as she like does like a 3-point turn or whatever, she backs over the landmine.
Well, like 3 times she comes within an inch of hitting this thing, and then on the final reverse it's right on top.
Yeah. So that's the end of Janie. So now we're down to our our 2 main guys, Frank and Joe.
Frank's getting awful thirsty with all this murder happening around him.
Yeah, he asks, Annie's in charge of kind of like, taking care of those kind of needs. And he's like, hand me the hydro drink. And she hands him this canteen, and he kind of fakes like he's drinking in it. And instead he drops a pill into it.
Okay.
And then he's like,
he just has a crotch full of pills.
I guess you got to be prepared for anything in this kind of thing.
I guess, but shit, that was a lot of pills in that container right in his crotch.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he's like, I'm sure you're thirsty too. And she's like, yeah, thanks. So she, or she asks, what flavor is it? And he's like, vanilla. And she drinks it and she's like, that's peach. And he's like, oh, sorry, taste buds got destroyed, years ago in one of the wrecks. And
the Swiss scientists couldn't put those back in.
Yeah. And then,
by the way, should we say something about the date rape drug? Or just gloss over it. It's up to you.
Yeah. They're definitely, obviously, any time that a man is sort of caught, giving a woman drugs without her knowledge, it's not great.
Yeah.
In this case, he has no, sort of like sexual assault intentions here. Like,
right.
It's still about
his intentions aren't good, but they're not sexual assault.
Yeah. And we pretty much see right away what's going on. So we get like a brief scene of, the protesters again talking about their newest plan, and Frankenstein's like, so where should we go next? What's your recommendation navigation wise? And she's like, my head's kind of swimmy, I don't know. And then she just kind of like faints, and then we see like a plane swooping overhead and like cars chasing after him. Like, clearly, the resistance is on his case at this point.
Right. They actually have a bomber start trying to drop bombs on Frank once they think Annie is dead.
Yeah, they see her in the car, slumped over. They're like, we're going to really let him have it now. And meanwhile, Joe is approaching and sees all this, and Myra's like, should we help him? And he's like, fuck no. Like, let them take care of him for me. That's great.
Right. He actually seems happy, though, and he doesn't, like, try to assault Myra.
Yeah. So we go back to Frank. He's, kind of maneuvering around. He manages to like outmaneuver the car that's chasing him, and then does this really cool move where he like drives directly at like a mountainside and stops at the last minute, but the plane can't, and the plane just crashes into a mountain.
Right. So he basically kills 2 vehicles. Mm-hmm. Hell yeah.
And the announcers are going crazy. Frankenstein has defeated the French Air Force. He's going to get huge points for that.
Right. He's got to win now, right?
Yeah.
But Annie wakes up and he's like, hey, I'm sorry. I had to basically knock you out because I had to kill your friends.
Yeah, I knew we were running into some trouble, and I don't quite trust you enough yet to know that you weren't going to like cause trouble during the fight. She starts to like grab the wheel like she's gonna like try to run him off the road, and he pulls over and he's like, "What are you doing? Like, what's going?" And this is like sort of like the moment where they have to like lay everything out on the table.
Right. She's like, "I've got to stop you," and he says, "No, you actually need to help me,
I need your help as a navigator. And so here's my plan. And he shows her what's under the other glove.
I've got to win so I can shake the president's hand with this literal hand grenade. This grenade that is built into a prosthetic hand.
Yeah. And she's like, but no, we got to come up with another plan. You'll die if you do that. Like, I don't want you to be a suicide bomber. Like, I care about you now. And he's like, no, this is my life's work. This is all... It's all been building to this. Yeah. They kind of leave it at that. We cut to Joe, who's getting close to the finish. He's just like speeding ahead.
Right. He wants to win this race in the name of hate. Which, that's a hell of a line, by the way.
Yeah. But we see, Frankenstein is now gaining on him. So, they have finished their conversation. We don't know how it all played out, but they're,
Joe
they're
gives
getting close.
An oil slick. The fucking
classic Looney Tunes, wacky races kind of thing there. But it does cause him to like kind of spin and go off road, but he still manages to catch up.
Yeah, Joe's going to kill Frank. He's like, I'm done. This is it. This is our final confrontation.
Yeah, they're like side by side, and they're both kind of like, smashing into each other, trying to run each other off the road. And Annie's like, give me your hand. And he's like, I'm in the middle of something. And she's like, no, give me your hand.
Yeah.
And he's like, so he takes off the hand grenade hand, and she, activates it, chucks it into Joe's car. It explodes. And, so now Frankenstein is sure to win. He's the last racer left.
Right, he's the last one standing. But he asks her, how am I going to kill the president now? Also, you're going to have to shift for me.
Right. And she's like, I've got an idea. You don't need to worry. The president needs to worry.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
So Frank does arrive as the 3-time winner. Well, there's actually been 3 Frankensteins.
Yeah, as they're approaching, the president's giving his speech. He's like railing against the French and how awful they are.
Well, the French, what's a French? Anyway, the French has caused the downfall of America's economy. They've caused all of our problems. How fucking common is that kind of stuff, This one group has caused all of our problems now until later.
Yeah. And so, of course, Frankenstein gets out. He's going to have his moment with the president. And as he's walking up to the podium, we see he's got a small little knife concealed in his hand. But before he can stab the president, Thomasina Payne pops up out of the crowd and fires and hits Frank.
Oh no! Why would she do this at the last second?
Because as futuristic as this movie is, cell phones don't exist, so there's no way to share what's going on.
Well, maybe they do, because it turns out that that's not Frank, that's Annie Stein in his outfit.
Yeah. So, of course, the crowd grabs Thomasina and pulls her down. Obviously, they're going to stop the rebel or whatever. And the president leans down to, like, Frankenstein, are you okay? And he pulls off the mask. That's when we see that that's Annie. And then Frankenstein is hidden, like, in, under the dash of the car.
Completely naked.
Pops up. Yeah, slams on the gas, just crashes into the podium, killing the president.
Everyone cheers because it's one final kill.
Yeah. So then we got Annie holding his hand up, like, victoriously, or like at the end, like a wrestling match or something. The crowd's chanting his name.
Frankenstein.
And then we just cut to, like, later. We have Frankenstein and Annie have gotten married, and it's like after the wedding, the reporters are all out front asking him.
It turns out he's now Mr. President Frankenstein.
Yeah, and they're like, "What's your plans?" And he's like, "Well, first of all, I'm getting rid of the secret police and all the the paramilitary stuff. I'm going to reestablish free elections. We're going to get this country back to a democracy, freedom, all of that."
Right. I'm also abolishing that race.
Yeah. And they're like, "But the race, everybody loves the race, and you ran the race. You love violence.
You became famous because of it."
Yeah, and so Frank hops in the car and runs him down.
Yep, one final kill as we go out.
Yep, and it's really, we also get so that takes us into credits, and we hear like the sort of monotone announcer voice just sort of describing the history of violence over human existence, starting with like the
Pleistocene era or something like that.
Yeah, like cave people. As we've been violent from day one, and we're going to keep being violent, basically.
And it's because of that violence that we became intelligent in the first place, is kind of how he makes it sound.
Yeah, which I guess kind of echoes like, the 2001: A Space Odyssey thing, where like it's when the monkey finally started hitting other monkeys with the bone that he like finally evolved into a human,
Yeah. Which I don't know that that's true, but sure, why not?
Yeah, so it's definitely very dark humor here. It's very nihilistic. It doesn't have a lot of hope for the future of humankind.
Well, it is hopeful at the very end, but it also, it does underscore the need for action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to resist, one, our own personal urges towards violence, and two, our society's collective urge towards violence.
Or our sedentary nature if we abhor violence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe don't act on the violence, but also just act.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a very political movie. It's especially if you think about like when it, I guess any era, it's always unfortunately going to be, an accurate statement. But like, for the 70s, we just like, had gotten out of Vietnam not long before. There's a tendency for our society to get into these violent conflicts.
How much more nihilistic do you think people became in the 80s when Reagan took over? I mean, there had to be some that led into the 90s, right? But then you also have the yuppies who are like, no, this is the best time.
Yeah. So this is a movie that it wants better for us, but it's definitely skeptical if we can manage it. And I get it. It's not entirely black-pilled, but it's not fully hopeful either. No. It's kind of in the middle there. Yeah. It's up to us to fix things.
Oh, by the way, we forgot to mention Thomasina had a very funny final line. She promises to be very harsh on those who don't want to be happy.
Right, yeah.
It's like, oh no, she's gone mad with power, but no, not really. She's okay. Either that or she realizes maybe she is going mad with power.
Yeah. But yeah, it's this movie. I mean, it's super fun, super dark. Yeah, there's a lot to chew on there. If you somehow have not seen this, obviously outside of the character being named Frankenstein, we find out that he's not really so much of a Frankenstein.
Well, his Frankenstein-ness is that he's an amalgamation of the other histories of Frankenstein.
Yeah, and he's a sort of a living myth in the same way that the Frankenstein monster is. Like, he's sort of larger than life, and he's a, as we kind of have talked about recently, there's this sort of idea of that, like, all of the Frankenstein stories are true because he keeps dying and being resurrected in Sharkenstein and then in, Bikini Frankenstein or whatever. Like, it's the same monster being revived and it's all canon.
Right.
And that's kind of what this movie's sort of implying as well. Like, we can make the myth whatever we want it to be, and that's what's going on here.
Exactly. It's all true in some degree, right? So the question is, who was the original Frankenstein? Maybe we'll find out in the future.
Yeah. Like we I actually had something else on the schedule for next week, but then watching this made me like want to look at the other ones. So there is a sequel to this movie, a direct sequel that came out in like 2017 or something like that, called Death Race 2050. So I think maybe we should talk about that next week, and then maybe down the road we'll do the sort of like more recent prequel series that started with the Jason Statham and everything. I'm curious to get into that, but I don't know that we want to do a full like 6-episode run of death races.
Why not? Now. Let's go down the death race hole. Right?
But yeah, at the very least, I figured this sequel that came out might be fun to because I've never seen it. I have no idea what it's like. I didn't even know it existed until a couple days ago. It obviously came out a long time after the original, and it has a lot of different people involved in it, but it is billed as a direct sequel, so it should be interesting.
Absolutely. All right. Well, anything else we got to say about it, Anthony?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, where can they find us?
So you can find us on all the socials at The Frankencast. You can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. We're also over on YouTube, and you can find us at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where we, do things a little bit even further off the beaten path than this one. So we'd love to have you over there to check out what we got going on. We still have the free trials and everything, so stop in, check out what we got, and stick around if you'd like.
Heck yeah. All right, well, anything else we got to say?
I think that's it.
Well, thank you, everyone, and to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.